the hidden truth behind 2,000 years of failed prophecies. May 21, 2011, 6 p.m. Jerusalem time. Harold Camping's voice crackled across radio waves in 61 languages as millions of believers around the world held their breath. Billboards in major cities proclaimed Judgment Day. Families had sold their homes. Children said goodbye to friends. A man in New York spent his life savings on 2,000 subway advertisements warning of the apocalypse. Yet exactly 6:01 p.m. The sun continued to shine. Children played in parks. Traffic moved normally. Nothing happened. But here's what they don't want you to know. Harold Camping wasn't the first. He wasn't even the 100th. For nearly 2,000 years, there's been a hidden pattern, a conspiracy of failed prophecies that the church rarely discusses openly. Today, I'm going to reveal something that will shake your understanding of biblical prophecy forever. By the end of this video, you'll discover the one secret that explains why every single end times prediction has failed, and why the next one will fail too. But first, let me ask you something that might disturb you. What if I told you that Jesus himself gave us the key to understanding why these prophecies fail, and it's been hiding in plain sight for 2,000 years? Part 1. The Forbidden History of Failed Predictions. Let me take you on a journey through time, a journey the modern church would prefer you never take. The year is 999 AD. Across medieval Europe, a terror grips the Christian world. Pope Sylvester Roman II receives reports of mass hysteria. Peasants abandon their fields. Nobles give away their wealth to monasteries. Why? Because they believe the millennium, the year 1000, will bring the return of Christ and the end of all things. Medieval imagery, dark cathedrals, churches overflow with terrified souls confessing their sins. Some historians estimate that up to half of Europe's population believed the world would end at the stroke of midnight on January 1st, 1000 AD. January 2nd, 1000 AD arrived with embarrassing normalcy. But the pattern was just beginning. Fast forward to 1843. A Baptist preacher named William Miller has done the mathematical calculations. Using the prophecies in Daniel, he's determined that Jesus will return sometime between March 1843 and March 1844. His followers, called Millerites, number in the hundreds of thousands across America. When March 1844 passed without incident, Miller recalculated. October 22, 1844. This time he was certain. Followers sold their possessions, quit their jobs, and gathered on hilltops in white robes, waiting for the rapture. October 23rd dawned cold and bitter. Not just the weather, but the crushing realization that became known in history as the Great Disappointment. But here's what's truly disturbing. Instead of learning from this catastrophe, the pattern accelerated. Part 2. The Modern Epidemic of False Prophecy, 1914. The newly formed Jehovah's Witnesses declare that Christ's invisible return has begun, with Armageddon to follow shortly. 1948. The rebirth of Israel triggers a prophetic frenzy. Suddenly, every preacher with a Bible and a calculator believes they can crack God's timeline. In 1988, Edgar Weisnant publishes 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. It sells 4-5 million copies. Christian bookstores can't keep it in stock. September 1988 comes and goes. Weisnant quietly publishes another book, 89 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1989. But the most shocking example, Y2K. As the year 2000 approached, prophecy teachers went into overdrive. Jerry Falwell declared it a sign of the times. Pat Robertson warned of possible apocalyptic scenarios. Christian families stockpiled food and water, certain that the computer glitch would trigger the end times. January 1st, 2000. The sun rose on a world with functioning computers and continued existence. And then came Harold Camping, the man who would take failed prophecy to a whole new level of public embarrassment. Part 3. The Harold Camping Revelation. Harold Camping wasn't just any prophecy teacher. He was a civil engineer, a man who built his reputation on mathematical precision. He owned family radio, broadcasting his calculations across the globe in 61 languages. But Camping had discovered something that he claimed no one else had seen. Through complex biblical numerology involving the numbers 5, 10, and 17, representing atonement, completeness, and heaven, he calculated the exact date, May 21, 2011. What made this different was the scope. Camping spent millions on advertising. Billboards appeared in major cities worldwide. His followers quit jobs, emptied retirement accounts, and prepared for the rapture. Robert Fitzpatrick, a retired engineer, spent his entire $140,000 life savings on subway ads in New York City warning of the coming judgment. Adrian Martinez spent $3,000 on gas and food driving across the country to warn people. And then, nothing. But here's the truly disturbing part. When May 21st passed, Camping didn't apologize. He didn't admit error. Instead, he recalculated. October 21st, 2011. The spiritual judgment had occurred on May 21st, he claimed, but the physical end would come in October. October 22, 2011. Harold Camping finally admitted he might have been wrong, but the damage was done. Families were destroyed. Life savings were gone. Faith was shattered. And yet, incredibly, the cycle continues to this day. Part 4. The conspiracy behind the prophecy industry. But here's what the prophecy industry doesn't want you to realize. There's a pattern here that goes deeper than just miscalculation. Every failed prediction follows the same formula. Step 1. Take a symbolic or metaphorical biblical passage and interpret it literally. Step 2. Apply modern events to ancient prophecies, ignoring historical context. Step 3. Create urgency through specific dates or time periods. Step 4. Build a following of devoted believers who validate the prediction. Step 5. When the prediction fails, find a way to recalculate or reinterpret. But there's something more sinister at work here. The prophecy industry, and yes, it is an industry, generates millions of dollars in book sales, conference tickets, and donations. Failed predictions don't end careers, they often boost them. Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth sold over 28 million copies by claiming the rapture would occur in the 1980s. When that failed, he continued writing bestsellers. Tim LaHaye's Left Behind series, built on specific end-time scenarios, sold over 65 million copies and generated hundreds of millions in revenue. The more dramatic the prediction, the bigger the audience. The more specific the date, the more urgent the need to buy the book or attend the conference. But what if I told you that the very man Christians claim to follow gave us the clearest warning against this entire industry? Part 5. The words they don't want you to remember. Matthew 24:36. These words should have ended the prophecy industry before it began. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Let that sink in. Jesus, the very person whose return these prophecy teachers claim to predict, explicitly stated that no one knows when he will return. Not the angels who dwell in heaven. Not even the Son himself in his earthly ministry. Only the Father. And yet somehow Harold Camping knew. William Miller knew. Edgar Weisnant knew. Hal Lindsey knew. They claimed to know what Jesus himself said he didn't know. But Jesus didn't stop there. Look at Mark 13:32-33. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, be alert. You do not know when that time will come. Be alert, not because you can calculate the date, but precisely because you cannot. And in Acts 1:7, when the disciples themselves try to get Jesus to reveal the timeline, his response is devastating to the entire prophecy industry. It is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority. It is not for you to know. How much clearer could it be? So here's the question that should haunt every prophecy teacher. If Jesus explicitly forbade date setting, why do they continue to do it? Part 6. The Psychology of Prophetic Deception. The answer reveals something deeply disturbing about human nature and about the spiritual forces that may be at work behind these deceptions. There are 3 psychological drivers that make prophetic prediction irresistible. First, the God complex. Predicting the future makes someone feel like they have divine knowledge, like they've cracked a code that's been hidden for centuries. It feeds the deepest human pride, the belief that we can be like God. Second, the control illusion. In a chaotic world, specific dates and timelines give people the illusion of control. I may not be able to control my job, my health, or my relationships, but at least I know when the world will end. Third, the validation addiction. Being part of a special group with secret knowledge creates powerful emotional bonds. These communities provide identity, purpose, and belonging, all built around shared predictions. But there's a fourth factor that's more sinister: financial motivation. The end times prophecy industry generates over $100 million annually in the United States alone. Books, conferences, DVDs, donation drives, all fueled by the urgency of impending apocalypse. And here's the twisted psychology. Failed predictions often increase devotion rather than destroy it. Cognitive dissonance theory explains why followers don't abandon failed prophets. They find ways to rationalize the failure and become even more committed. When Camping's May 2011 prediction failed, many followers didn't leave. They doubled down, convinced that their faith was being tested. Part 7. The biblical conspiracy they've hidden. But there's something even deeper here, something that suggests these false predictions might not be accidents or honest mistakes. Jesus warned about this specific deception in Matthew 24:23-24. At that time, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Messiah," or "There he is," do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Notice the warning. The deception will be so convincing that even true believers, the elect, might be deceived. And in Matthew 24:26, Jesus gives an even more specific warning. So if anyone tells you, "There he is out in the wilderness," do not go out, or "Here he is in the inner rooms," do not believe it. In other words, don't follow those who claim to know where or when Christ will appear. Paul echoes this warning in 2 Thessalonians 2:1-3, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered to him. We ask you, brothers and sisters, not to become easily unsettled or alarmed by the teaching allegedly from us, whether by a prophecy or by word of mouth or by letter, asserting that the day of the Lord has already come. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way. The Apostle Paul is warning against exactly what we've seen for 2,000 years, teachers who claim special revelation about Christ's return. So here's the disturbing question. What if these failed prophecies aren't just mistakes? What if they are part of a larger deception designed to discredit genuine biblical prophecy and make people cynical about Christ's actual return? Part 8. The hidden truth about biblical prophecy. Here's what the prophecy industry has obscured. Biblical prophecy was never meant to be a crystal ball for predicting future events. Look at how prophecy actually functions in Scripture. The Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah weren't given so people could calculate his exact birth date. They were given to help people recognize him when he came. Daniel's prophecies weren't meant to be mathematical formulas for calculating the end times. They were meant to encourage God's people during persecution that God remains in control of history. The book of Revelation isn't a detailed timeline of future events. It's an apocalyptic vision designed to comfort persecuted Christians with the assurance that Christ will ultimately triumph. The biblical prophecy serves 4 primary purposes. 1. To reveal God's character and sovereignty. 2. To call people to repentance and faithful living. 3. To provide comfort during times of suffering. 4. To authenticate God's messengers when prophecies are fulfilled. Notice what's missing from that list: date setting, timeline calculation, prophetic speculation. The irony is devastating. In their obsession with predicting when Christ will return, prophecy teachers have missed the entire purpose of why biblical prophecy was given in the first place. Part 9. The spiritual warfare behind false prophecy. But there's an even darker dimension to this deception, one that most people never consider. What if the epidemic of false prophecy is actually spiritual warfare designed to accomplish 3 specific goals? Goal #1. Discredit genuine biblical prophecy. When prediction after prediction fails, people become skeptical of all prophetic claims, including legitimate ones. Goal #2. Create prophetic fatigue. After decades of false alarms, even genuine signs of Christ's return might be dismissed as just another failed prediction. Goal #3. Destroy faith. Every failed prediction leaves a trail of shattered believers, broken families, and cynical former Christians who now reject the gospel entirely. Consider this chilling possibility. What if the ultimate goal of false prophecy is to ensure that when Christ actually does return, people won't be watching because they've been conditioned to ignore all prophetic warnings? Jesus warned, "But when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth?" Luke 18:8. What if false prophecy is designed to ensure the answer to that question is no? Part 10. The revelation that changes everything. But here's the truth that will transform your understanding of biblical prophecy forever. Jesus didn't tell us the exact date of his return for the most profound spiritual reason, because knowing the date would destroy the very purpose of our earthly existence. Think about it. If you knew Jesus was returning on, say, December 15th, 2030, how would you live? You'd probably coast spiritually until about 2029, then get serious about faith in the final year. You might make selfish decisions knowing the world would end soon. You'd lose the urgency of evangelism, the motivation for long-term discipleship, the need for daily surrender. But when we don't know the date, every day becomes sacred. Every decision matters eternally. Every relationship could be our last opportunity to show Christ's love. Every moment of faithfulness counts. This is why Jesus said in Matthew 24:42, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." The uncertainty isn't a bug in God's plan, it's a feature. It's designed to keep us spiritually awake, morally alert, and eternally focused. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment we stop trying to calculate Christ's return and start living as if he could return any moment, we're finally living the way he intended. Part 11. The signs we can trust. But this doesn't mean we ignore biblical prophecy entirely. Jesus did give us signs to watch for, not to calculate dates, but to recognize seasons. In Matthew 24, Jesus describes signs that would precede his return. Wars and rumors of wars, famines and earthquakes, false prophets deceiving many, the gospel preached to all nations, persecution of believers, apostasy within the church. But notice how he concludes this list in verse 33. "Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door." Near, not on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Right at the door, not in exactly 1,260 days. The signs point to seasons, not specific dates. They create anticipation, not calculation. And here's what's remarkable. Many scholars believe we're seeing an unprecedented convergence of these signs in our generation. Not because someone did the math, but because the conditions Jesus described are aligning in ways never seen before in history. A climactic revelation, the final truth. So here's the ultimate truth that explains 2,000 years of failed prophecy. Every single prediction has failed because God never intended for us to know the exact timing. The failure isn't a bug, it's proof that the system is working exactly as God designed it. The prophecy industry has been trying to hack a code that was never meant to be cracked, solve a puzzle with missing pieces that God intentionally withheld. And the most profound irony, in their desperate attempts to know when Christ will return, they've missed the entire point of why he's returning, to claim a bride who lived faithfully without knowing the wedding date. Jesus is looking for a people who loved him and served him and remained faithful, not because they knew he was coming next Tuesday, but because they believed he was worth following even if he never came back at all. That's the kind of faith that moves God's heart. That's the kind of devotion that proves genuine love. That's the kind of commitment that validates our claim to be his followers. Living in the light of eternity. So where does this leave us? We live watchful but not anxious, alert but not obsessed, expectant but not date-setting, prepared but not paralyzed. We understand that every failed prophecy has actually been a divine mercy, a protection against the spiritual dangers of knowing too much too soon. We recognize that biblical prophecy isn't about satisfying our curiosity about the future. It's about transforming how we live in the present. And we embrace the beautiful uncertainty that keeps us dependent on faith rather than sight, hope rather than calculation, love rather than fear. The question isn't when will Jesus return. The question is, will I be ready whenever he comes? Will you be found faithful on that day, not because you calculated correctly, but because you lived correctly? Will you be watching, not the calendar, but your own heart? Will you be prepared, not with charts and timelines, but with a life surrendered completely to the one whose timing is perfect, whose plan is sovereign, and whose love never fails? Because when Christ does return, and he will return, the only date that will matter is today. The only time that will matter is now. The only question that will matter is whether you chose to follow him not knowing when he would come back, but believing that he was worth following anyway. That's the faith that changes eternity. That's the devotion that survives every failed prophecy. And that's the truth they never want you to discover. Stay faithful, stay watchful, and remember, the best way to prepare for tomorrow is to live faithfully today. If this video opened your eyes to the truth behind failed prophecy, you need to see our next investigation, the secret history